Hi, everybody, and welcome back to yet another cracking installment of the Matt Brown Show. This is the Secrets of Fail series, where we're talking to CEOs all about their failures in business. I know, like the stuff you're not going to find in a press release. So with us on the line is the CEO of a crazy cool company, which we're going to be talking about up front, called Zilliant at Zilliant.com. But his name is Pascal Yammine. Welcome to the show, bud.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks for having me.
No, the privilege is all mine, man. So listen, why don't you kick us off? Let's give us the elevator pitch, man. What are you guys up to?
That was good. Zilliant. So I'm new to Zilliant. I started in August of last year. So Zilliant has been around for a couple decades now. Zilliant is focused on helping our customers create value. That's ultimately what we speak about. Value is in corporations is built by selling more or higher margins, increasing your revenues or growing your bottom line as well. Now, historically, Zilliant has done that through pricing, but we can do that in a lot of other ways as well. So our focus is helping our customers create value. Pricing is one of the tools that we're most well known for, but certainly opportunities to help our customers with revenue growth is a core part of our new value proposition.
Especially now, right? I mean, given the market where it's at, it's like you come to me and you go, hey, I can help you make more money. It's like, whoop, whoop. It's like you're a headache pill. Right. You're not a vitamin
Make
anymore.
more money or make more profitable money is even better. Right.
Even better. Exactly. So what are some of the typical challenges that you solve for a customer? Or by the way, is your customer a big enterprise business? Is it everybody who wants to, add more value to what they do? Or, walk us through like some of the typical challenges that you solve.
Most of our customers today are enterprise companies. Oftentimes, we will see companies in manufacturing, distribution, companies who have a lot of sensitivity to pricing, maybe a lot of sensitivity to the materials they have to use for pricing, et cetera. But we're certainly scaling that. I mean, we've seen such a great value for our customers that I've come to Zilliant with the mentality of it's so good and we create so much value that we should make it available to all companies of all sizes. And that's kind of part of our goal to scale the business. So certainly a lot of challenges that we have is data. Data is a core part of our value proposition. We need the data. And when we give us the data, we can create amazing insights.
Yeah, how do you, it just came up on a show recently, but how do you get around a business going, here's my customer data? You know what I mean? Like, because if you're going to do pricing or CVP stuff, it's like going to Microsoft going, listen, give me all your small business customer details.
Yeah. The hard part is usually getting the data. The permission to get the data is usually not a problem. We can anonymize it. We have a lot of ways to deal with sensitivity around data governance, if that's part of what you're referring to. The hard part is the data is in different systems. The data might be in different e-commerce systems, ERP systems. Sometimes data might be in a 30, 40-year-old system. That's the challenge, is getting the data in a useful format. But we can anonymize it. We have really large name customers who have trusted us with their data, and we are prioritize trust as a core value for our customers to make sure they can trust us with the data. But it doesn't make it easy to get the data necessarily.
I understand. Cool. So let's get on to the meat and the potatoes of this series, which is all about failure. So why don't you hit us up, Pascal? What is your story of fail for our audience around the world today?
Well, I have so many failure stories. I kind of think of that as an area of pride for me. It's learning from failures. And I love the show for that reason. It's just giving people the opportunity to be vulnerable and share mistakes that they've made, and more importantly, lessons that come out of it. For me, the story I'll focus on is about 25 years ago. It was a startup. I was in my early 20s. It was a software startup. It was when SaaS was still pretty new. Salesforce was still leading the way and really paving the way for SaaS. And, a couple of friends and I, we had a crazy idea of applying SaaS to physical safety and security. So this is threat assessments for buildings and facilities. And so we developed the technology. We got about $1.5 million in seed capital to kind of kick it off. That's the beginning. Sounds great so far. Sounds like an ideal scenario. With that, we had some exciting conversations. We had made the technology work for different types of facilities, chemical facilities, facilities that manufacture food. And as you can imagine, they each have regulatory concerns and challenges. We had school districts, some of the largest in the U.S. who had assigned to become customers. We had airports. We had air forces as well from foreign governments. Reality is we had a ton of interest in a massive area, and we realized after about a year of building the technology and generating all these contracts that we have never actually implemented one. And we've made commitments to a lot of it.
Yeah. So why was that? Why didn't you guys implement them in the end?
We were so focused on proving the value and selling that we never actually realized that we have to start with something simple, right? And it's focus. It was a lack of focus for us. It's exciting when you have an idea, you're excited, you want to tell everybody about it. That doesn't necessarily mean you should tell everybody about it, or maybe you can tell everybody about it. It doesn't mean you should get to commercial agreements with everybody, including government agencies, who are a little less flexible.
Yeah, that's classic.
Yeah.
All right. So what did that experience teach you, Pascal?
It's great to have a big market. I mean, we all want to play in an area where there's a big sandbox, a lot of opportunities. We can see a possible growth to become, your next unicorn. That's what we all want. That doesn't mean we need to start there. I mean, defining your market up front, in that example, every type of facility, an Air Force base is very different than a grade school, which is very different than a chemical facility. They have different regulatory. So the application of our capability is different for every one of those. Every one required different use cases. We could have picked one of those, let's just say chemical facilities, and become a unicorn. But instead, we didn't, and we were so spread out that we had lack of resources. We spent all of our money, and then we had to go raise money just to do and to execute on the delivery. That wasn't easy to do.
Yeah, I'm sure. So it's this idea, I suppose, you're not the first startup founder to do that.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I think there's this saying that I love, which is, most startups are starving on indigestion because they're saying yes to everything. It's like, just like what you were saying, it's like, well, if you're just focused on one use case, you could have become this massive behemoth anyway, right. But you don't, because you feel like you need runway and cash. And so you just say yes to everything, and you start, so you eat too much and you start to starve as a consequence.
Yeah. And the ego got to us. I mean, we're just, inexperienced, young, a lot of really big eyes, really big appetite. You realize our stomachs weren't big enough to support that.
Yeah. So what happened then after that? So you raised money and you went and implemented all those things? Like, how did that?
We raised money, and we realized that we were over capacity, overstretched. We realized that implementing wasn't as easy as we thought it would be. We realized that some of these countries and companies were international. And so we have to translate this? That's a complete different. So we started realizing that there was a lot more problems that we didn't think through because we were so excited that we just let the excitement get to us. And a lot of those contracts got canceled or failed. We couldn't deliver in the commitments we made. And so we had to get out of it. And then we decided to go to the West Coast. We raised our seed capital out of several investors. People wrote checks for $25K all the way up to $500,000. That was the initial $1.5 million. We spent that, so fast. And then we had really nothing to show for it in terms of actual revenue. We had contracts that without revenue. We went to go for a series, and we got laughed out of the room because, now in my experience now, what do you look for? You look for the management.
Yeah.
We had a couple young, eager, enthusiastic guys who had a great idea, but who had no experience.
Yeah, it comes up a lot. I speak to a lot of VC firms. I've a running series called Private Placement Perspectives. And the thing around team always comes up, and it's difficult. Like especially when you have a first time founder or founding team rather, coming to you and going, listen, we need $1 million in seed funding or 5 million or whatever it is. It's like, but these guys never built a business before, you know what I mean? Yeah. And pretty much every single VC firm I've ever interviewed or general partner of one or MD of one, it's all subjective. and it's like gambling with private equity, like securities, you know what I mean? And it's kind of like, well, do I like this guy or do I like this team, or do I get a nice warm fuzzy feeling? But other than that, it's, there's no objectivity in it. It's pretty much all subjective.
Yeah, that's right. And I think the reality is you want the founders, you want the excitement, you want the enthusiasm, but that isn't enough. It's not enough to be successful. There's way too many people with that. And it's certainly required. And we had that, but we didn't have the execution. We didn't have the experience. We didn't have the maturity to say no, even though we should have said no a lot of times.
So Pascal, let's go back in time. So here's the keys to the Matt Brown Show time machine. If you could go back to yourself then, to avoid that situation, or maybe you wouldn't avoid it, but what would you do differently?
I think the second, and focus is important and is a core part of this, but second is customer success. I mean, I've been in SaaS ever since. So that was my entry point into the SaaS business model. Salesforce led the way. I spent 14 years at Salesforce after that, of course. And the realization of the importance of customer success in SaaS was something that I had no appreciation for back then. I mean, it didn't mean anything to me. It wasn't until I got into Salesforce and saw how Salesforce ran and prioritized it. And so again, we had a lot of great feedback. We had a lot of customers who wanted it, but we had no customers who were successful. We just never actually implemented it. And so I think it's success breeds success. Just like, you learn from failures, you learn from successes. And so going back in time in the Matt Brown time machine, I would go back and I would say, hey, we got a good customer. Let's just say it's a school district. Let's do it. Let's just forget everything else. Let's just get them successful. Let's get them to become a reference, because there's a lot of school districts across the US and they all needed it.
Yeah, that's a really important point. So what is your advice, Pascal, to other, founder entrepreneurs right now in terms of, the importance of failing in business success, or perhaps their relationship with failure? What's your words of wisdom there?
Most importantly, don't fight it. It's going to happen. You learn from it. If you don't learn from it, then that's the worst failure you can have, is you fail and not learn from it. You're going to fail. The worst thing you can do is not take a risk because you're afraid to fail. So the first and foremost, take a risk, but have some plans in place where you don't take a risk to the point where you keep failing and you don't learn from it. You got to have that rebound. And that's where a lot of the experience comes. And that's where a lot of going back to the VCs, while we were laughed out of the room, we had nobody who was part of the management team that can kind of actually help us deal with that failure, right? If we just, our answer was, we need more money to do what? Well, to go sell more? No, we needed somebody who can help us understand how to actually rationalize what we failed in, how we failed, and how we would do it differently. Now I could do that easily in the time machine.
Yeah, it's hindsight's always a perfect science, isn't it? But I mean, I don't find I wouldn't, if I think about all the clusterfucks, I've in my journey of founding 14 companies, lots of failure, but, I've had a couple exits, raised money, bootstrap, done it all over the last 25 years. I don't think I would actually change it. Do you know what I mean? I wouldn't, if I had the Matt Brown Show time machine, I wouldn't go back, to day one and then change it to prevent myself from getting the QBE or the qualified by experience degree, because it's kind of like that. That's the journey, isn't it? It's because in business, it's always binary. If you can keep your business alive long enough, you're probably going to get acquired or something. Do you know what I mean?
That's right.
But you can't get that outcome unless you get the 0 first. You don't get the 1 unless you have the lots and lots of zeros.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, and certainly don't be afraid to fail, and certainly don't stop after the failure. You keep pushing. It's a numbers game in many ways, and you want a lot of at-bats, and you want a lot of opportunities to fail and grow and learn and experience it. And I think it's invaluable. It's more, you learn more from the failures than anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell me, you're now obviously CEO of Zilliant. So what do you now take into the Zilliant culture in terms of philosophies around failure? Is there a culture of encouraging failure, and how do you get that right?
Yeah, Zilliant's been around for over 20 years. It's taken a lot of different forms and changed its priorities and its focus over those 20 years. And so in many ways, because we've been around for 20 years, it almost becomes an obstacle, because there's a reputation of what Zilliant has done for the last 20 years. You mentioned price optimization. That's what we're known for. We have people who are part of the Zilliant team who have built Zilliant for the last 15, 20 years. And so a lot of it is encouraging entrepreneurial innovation within our company. We're not, a Fortune 100 company. We're still small, but when you have 20 years of history, sometimes innovation becomes harder to find. So number one, encouraging my leadership team to be okay with failing as well, and taking chances. Just because it's worked a certain way for the last 20 years doesn't mean that's the future. We are here to change and to transform Zilliant, to create value for our customers. And like I mentioned earlier, much more repeatable and much more scalable value. In order to do that, we have to find ways to do things differently.
Absolutely. Tell me, Pascal, are there any books or tools or resources that you use or that you would recommend to other CEOs or entrepreneurs on their journey?
I flunked out of college, so that was another failure opportunity. That's for a different show, Matt. We can talk about that another time. But it's a good story. I'll tell you another time. One of the books I got at the time from one of my advisors, who I did get back into college and I got a master's. So there's a recovery side of that story. Was the Rhinoceros Success. It's a very small book. I think it's maybe 40, 50 pages. I don't remember the author's name, but it was basically about focus, thick skin. Like a rhinoceros runs forward, it almost has blinders on, and it doesn't let things get to them. Like their skin is very thick and can take a lot. And it was really around just kind of dealing with, those scenarios where, you feel like the world is ending. You feel like you just gotten being beat down like crazy for whatever reason, and just giving you the focus to keep moving.
Yeah, amazing stuff. Look, Pascal, we definitely need to hang out. I feel like there's like a whole bunch of other stuff we've only just given the surface. But unfortunately, that does conclude your time on the Secrets of Fail series and for being in the hot seat. Thank you for being vulnerable. Thank you for coming on the show and kind of making a difference and letting, the faculty of business owners know that it's okay to fail.
Yeah. Thanks, Matt. I appreciate the time.
Anytime. Thanks.